order. And first thing is to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? The agenda is adopted. We have a delegation, and this is regarding emergency response to the town of Comox. And Shelley is at the podium, ready to roll. And also welcome Mike Fournier here from the regional district. All right, you have the floor, and I understand it's approximately 20-minute presentation?
Approximately.
Okay. Go.
Well, thank you, Your Worship and councillors, for the opportunity to present to you tonight. This, I believe, is a first for me. Tonight, we're going to learn a little bit about the emergency response in the town of Comox, and in particular, council's role during an emergency response event. So we're going to do that in two parts. First, very quickly, we'll take a look at the legislation, some of the requirements of local governments in BC, as well as some of the powers that it enables local governments to have and take when responding to emergency events in their communities. And second, we'll take a look at a scenario event in the town of Comox and walk through some of the decisions that will need to be made, as well as some of the steps that will need to be taken in responding to that emergency event. And for that purpose, we'll take a look at an interface fire in Northern States. I should point out both Mike Fournier from the Comox Valley Emergency Program, as well as Mark Schreiner, Fire Chief, are here to help me answer any questions that council may have. And if you do have questions, then feel free to ask during the presentation if you like. So first, very quickly, through the legislation in BC, we have the Emergency Program Act. I just thought I'd highlight a couple of provisions in that act and try and provide a local context. Section 6.3, Council must establish and maintain an emergency management organization. And of course, we have the Comox Valley Emergency Program, which is a joint initiative between Comox, Courtenay, Cumberland, and the regional district. Section 6.3.2, Council may appoint a coordinator for the emergency management organization. And of course, that is Mike Fournier, we all know. Section 6.4, Council may, in writing, delegate its powers and duties, those are the powers when responding to an emergency event, to the emergency management organization or a coordinator. And we have also done that through the Comox Valley Emergency Program Policy Agreement bylaw that has been adopted by each of the local governments in the Comox Valley here. And an important point to make is that Council may delegate all of the powers in the emergency management organization except for the power to declare a state of local emergency. That can only be done by bylaw, by council resolution, or by order of the mayor. 12.1, at any time, council or the mayor is satisfied that an emergency exists or is imminent, then the council or the mayor may declare a state of a local emergency. That's the trigger for enabling all of the powers in the Emergency Management and the Emergency Program Act is the declaration of a state of local emergency. So there's quite a bit in the act about that. Declaration of a state of local emergency must identify the nature of the emergency, of course, identify the part of the town, and as I mentioned, be made by bylaw, resolution of council, or order of the mayor. Immediately after making the declaration, again, some more requirements, council and the mayor must forward a copy to the Minister of Justice and, of course, communicate the details of the declaration to the population affected. One more slide on the legislation after a declaration of the state of local emergency. So this is where the real powers are listed in the Act, Section 13.1. Council may do all acts it considers necessary, such as, and I've only listed a few here, require or use any personal property, authorize or require any person to render assistance if they are qualified to render that assistance, control or prohibit access to an area, cause the evacuation of an area, authorize the entry to a building or land without a warrant, cause the demolition of structures or constructions of works. So some pretty big powers in the Act when responding to emergencies in your communities. And finally, section 13.6, council may by bylaw borrow any money necessary to pay expenses caused by the emergency. Excuse me. The bylaw must be ratified by the Minister of Community Services, but it does not require the approval or assent of the electors. And so just a point here, council or local government is responsible for paying all expenses related to going through the emergency up front, and then afterwards, if all goes well, hopefully be reimbursed for all of the expenses. So let's move on to our scenario. Let's say it's...
Sorry, Shelley, just before we do, the declaration that's made, what is the practice? Is it normal that a resolution is done, or is it because it's such an emergency that you can't have a council meeting and the mayor?
That's right. So the vast majority of the orders or of the declarations are made by order of the mayor, and I'll show you what that looks like in a bit here.
Okay.
So moving on to our scenario. Let's say it's 6 a.m. one early morning, in the middle of a hot, dry summer, such as we've just had, and a resident out walking his dog notices what appears to be a large amount of smoke coming from the northeast woods. So, of course, the resident calls 911, and 911 dispatches the fire department to go and take a look. They head up to the end of Torrance Road at the parking lot there. I hope we're all familiar with that. There we go, right up to, that's the parking lot at the end of Torrance Road. And after a quick look around, they determine that indeed there is quite a large fire burning, and even more alarmingly, it is blowing towards the northwest and the subdivisions to the west there. Unfortunately. So I've broken this down into 5 or 6 steps. Step 1, establish an incident command post. So an incident command post is an on-site coordination center for responders and operations. The command post can be set up out of the back of a vehicle. It can be set up under a tent or out of a portable trailer or out of a building, as long as it's set up close to the site, within view of the site, but outside of the danger zone. So in this case, the incident commander, who would be one of the first responders on the scene with the most authority, so in this case, most likely the fire chief or one of his deputies, assesses the situation, determines that it is very critical, and he's going to need the support of other agencies and resources. So through the town's mutual aid agreement with other fire departments in the town, the incident commander calls in other fire departments. He calls in the base fire department. He calls in the Courtney Fire Department. He may also call in the Public Works Department for the use of their equipment in fighting the fire. And he may also call in the Parks Department for the use of their water truck in watering down areas adjacent to the roadway or maybe the parking lot where they've set up the incident commander. At the same time, the incident commander is going to be calling the CAO to update and advise him of the situation, who in turn will immediately call mayor and councillors to let them know of the situation. The CAO is going to open up town hall. Again, it was 6 a.m., so it's before town hall is actually open. He will open up town hall, call in some staff in order to respond to any questions of the media that may be coming in, questions of the public. As well, he'll have some staff put information up on our website and broadcast out to social media. So at this point in time, the main role for council is going to be consistent messaging. You're no doubt going to be receiving phone calls personally or having inquiries posted onto your social media accounts. And it's important to just have a clear and accurate message that's being sent out at this time.
Shelley, if I could ask a question. So the mayor and councils are advised by the CAO. Now, so the responsibility going to the fire department would be very busy at that time, so we're relying on Chief Schreiner to call Richard at that time?
That's right. That's right, he's going to be busy managing
be
the
busy.
fire and calling in resources. And
Right.
he'll still be in direct communication with Richard.
So part of his fan out list is going to be these people, CAO is going to be one of the first he's going to be calling.
Right.
Okay.
And Shelley, so then, council, then, the expectation for us would be to stay home or to come to the town hall?
No, at this point, town hall will be open, and absolutely any mayor and council, if you wish, come down to town hall. That might be a good place to be if you want to be kept apprised of the situation, hour by hour. Like we said, the CAO will be there and in constant communication with the fire chief.
And if the town hall was unavailable for any reason, what would be the plan B?
Plan B, if the town hall was unavailable, would be to either open up the works yard or even the fire hall.
Or the works admin building you're talking about? The
Yes.
new building?
Yeah, the admin building that works. Yeah.
Earthquake.
So step 2, activate the town's emergency operations center. So at this point, the situation is unfortunately becoming worse. The wind has picked up and is blowing the fire and smoke even further to the west, towards the homes to the west.
Sorry, Paul.
I got my hose out.
You get the
And so at this point, the fire chief has called in, he's called in a lot of resources, Courtney Fire Department, he's called in the base, he's called in the Parks and Public Works Department. At this point, he's probably called in the RCMP for site security purposes. And he's also put on notice the Comox Valley Emergency Program Coordination Center, as well as possibly Comox Valley Search and Rescue, as well the Comox Valley Emergency Social Services Organization, and we'll talk a little bit about those in a bit. So there's a lot of responders that have been put on alert or have come to respond, and the fire chief has requested the activation of the Emergency Operations Center in order to essentially provide coordination center providing support to all of the on-scene responders. So the CAO, in consultation with mayor and any councillors that may be present back at Town Hall, authorizes the activation of the Emergency Operations Center and determines the location and the staffing. So we do have a number of potential locations for an emergency operations center. We talked about the admin building, perhaps the fire hall. However, the primary location at this point is right here in council chambers due to its proximity to town hall. So they would activate council chambers as the emergency operations center, and then the CAO would call in the staffing. Once the EOC is activated, the CAO becomes the EOC director. Some of the key people that he will most likely bring in would be an information officer. An information officer might be myself or perhaps Dawn, to manage all of the information coming in, incoming messages, requests for information, status reports from the incident command center. So manage that, develop key communications, as well as provide necessary and essential documentation. It's a critical part of managing an emergency. Probably most likely also bring in a liaison officer who will most likely be Mike Fournier, and the liaisons officer is mainly to liaise between the EOC and the incident command post and manage the communications back and forth. Finance officer, it's always good to have a finance person, so that person will probably also be brought in, of course. And may also bring in operations sections chiefs as required, so maybe the parks and public works department heads, may also bring in somebody from the RCMP. I should point out, that Mike in the Comox Valley Emergency Plan has developed an extensive set of guides and resources and checklists, and so that will be relied on in the activation of the EOC. A little bit about the communication protocol. So there will be a lot of information coming into the EOC, as I said, requests for information from the media, perhaps requests for interviews, status reports from Incident Command Center. And this high flow of information requires a specific process for the receipt, prioritization, distribution, reply, and again, documentation, a very essential part of that. So because an EOC, as you might imagine, can be a very loud, busy, chaotic place to be, what will also be set up is what we call a briefing room at the EOC, and that's a room that's aside where the EOC commander and the information officer will communicate with mayor, councilors, and the media. And so with respect to the council chambers as an EOC, that will most likely be the Bill's office downstairs as a separate area, and then we'll use the back stairs to go up and down. And while mayor and council are obviously welcome to come directly up to the EOC here, it might be best, it might be a better place for them downstairs, just away from the hustle and bustle and chaos of everything going on. At this point, council's role is a bit of policy in the activation of the EOC and consultation with the CO, and of course consistent messaging is always a good role. So step 3, the declaration of a state of local emergency. As I said, this is the trigger to empowering council with all of those powers that are listed in the act. So if we go back to our scenario, situation is unfortunately not getting any better anytime soon. And so the incident commander, the fire chief, has determined that he might actually need to evacuate residents. And so what he's going to do is he's going to call down to the EOC and the EOC commander and request that a declaration of state of local emergency be enacted. And as I said, this is the trigger to exercise the emergency powers listed in the Emergency Program Act. The EOC commander, the CAO, in consultation again with mayor and any councilors that may be present at the EOC, determine the form of a declaration. As I mentioned, there's 3 ways that you can issue a declaration. The most likely, due to the nature of the incident, at this point will be by order of the mayor. And so we will draft up a quick declaration of state of emergency. We have a quick fill-in-the-blank online form we can do, have it signed by the mayor, and then get it off to where it needs to go. Sent to the local media, of course, the Minister of Justice is a requirement. And then, of course, we'll post it up on the town website and broadcast it out to our social media.
So the EOC is set up before any of that happens.
Yes.
Okay, so you don't need to have that to get an EOC. The EOC would happen without that.
Right. Yes. Yeah. No, you don't need the declaration in order to set up.
Shelley, what would be the reason for a bylaw or a resolution?
There's just the act provides three ways that a declaration of local, or that a declaration of a state of local emergency can be issued. And in fact, at Town Hall here, we do have a bylaw that has been drafted up, given first, second, and third reading, I believe. So we could issue the declaration by bylaw if we could get a quorum of council together in order to adopt that bylaw in a quick enough time period. But because these situations are usually pretty time sensitive, the order of the mayor.
But so, what There wouldn't be any advantage to doing it that way. It's just a mechanism.
It is a mechanism, yeah. And perhaps in some cases they have the time and they, maybe it's a council policy or preference that they would really like to do it by council resolution. Maybe it's a decision that's made by different municipalities at the time.
I think using this example in particular, with the fire racing towards the mayor's house,
Hannah's missing.
he may actually be standing there with a garden hose at his own house and not here. And so the acting mayor may choose, or may be a little bit uncomfortable with making that declaration on your own. And you may prefer to have a council resolution, in which case the bylaw could be adopted.
Can we have a council meeting though without the statutory notice that we're having it, that we have to give a day's notice, or can we just...
You can waive, you
Okay.
can waive that requirement, yeah.
So Shelley, is there money that comes from federal or provincial, and at what point does all of this enact the fact that we actually get some money for some of
That's
this?
why it's essential to do documentation,
Right.
because all of the money does need to be, it doesn't come
Yeah.
during the event, it comes after.
I know we had this presentation already, that's why I asked, and Mike sort of pointed out to us that the documentation is the key to getting
Yeah.
some funding
Yeah.
at the end of it, so.
And again, the council role here is one of policy in determining the timing for the issuance of a declaration of state of local emergency, the form, as Richard mentioned, and again, consistent messaging throughout. So, step 4. So we've got our declaration of local emergency. I always get tripped up over that. Declared, we've got that issued. Incident commander, again, he has determined that he's most likely going to need to evacuate those residents to the west. The first plan is the first step is to formulate an evacuation plan. An evacuation plan has a number of components. Of course, it must identify the evacuation zone or the area of residents to be evacuated. In some cases, you may need an assembly point, and this is a point where local residents can go if they're unable to get out themselves. Perhaps they don't have a car available at home. So you would set up or identify what's called an assembly point where residents can go in order to catch some bus form of transportation, perhaps a bus. You would need to identify the reception center, and I'll talk about that in the next step. Some other requirements. You'd like to give the anticipated time before the actual evacuation order is issued. So just putting, the notice will say just putting you on alert right now. We expect that perhaps within a certain time frame. And then once that order is issued, identify the best available route to take out and down to the reception center. You would want to provide a list of essential items for evacuees to take, gather up and take with them. You don't want residents to be all panicked and then to try and think off the top of their head, oh, what do I need to take? So you would provide a list of items for them to gather, medications, glasses, things like that. An evacuation is going to require the involvement of other agencies, and this is where Comox Valley Search and Rescue might come in going door to door in order to advise residents. It's going to require the involvement of the Emergency Social Services organization, which we'll talk about with respect to the reception center in the next slide. You may also need to plan for area security, preventing residents from going back home, preventing people from driving through the area, and also you may need to take care of pet welfare, so you may need to advise local kennels or the SPCA. So now, Once the evacuation plan is approved and activated by the EOC director, who's the CAO, in consultation with mayor and any councillors that may be present, actually the next step is to approve and activate it. So it will be approved and activated. And again, council role will be policy in approving and activating the evacuation plan in consultation with the CAO. And again, consistent messaging.
So nothing specifically is required, it's not a council resolution thing, it's just the CEO would do it, he would just...
It is. It's just a consultation role.
Like our policy allows, obviously, for this to happen.
Right. That's right. And so, it's just consultation within the mayor and council. Step 5 would be the activation of the reception center. So at this point, the evacuation order or alert, even the alert has not gone out. The plan has been formulated. But you want to make sure that you have your reception center activated before you actually issue the evacuation alert even. Because you don't want, the last thing you want is for people to start arriving at your reception center before it's even been activated and people have started coming to it. So a reception center is a centralized, coordinated center operated by Emergency Social Services Agency. And Emergency Social Services is a group of about 50 volunteers in the Comox Valley here. I believe the Red Cross might be part of that. And what they do is they provide emergency food and clothing and staff the reception centers. In Comox here we do have a number of predetermined centers for a reception center, our Comox Community Center being the primary one. We also have the fire hall can be used as a reception center, as well as the United Church and the Presbyterian Church can also be set up as reception centers in town. So the reception center is identified, let's say at the Comox Community Center, and activated, as I said, before the evacuation alert or order are issued. The assembly points have been identified, transportation has been made available. Another thing that needs to be considered when activating the reception center is the registration, the ability to register all of the evacuees. And again, there are some great checklists and forms and guides in the Comox Valley Emergency Plan that will be followed in activating the reception center. So final step, issue the evacuation alert and order. So first, you would hope you would have enough time to at least issue an alert first before the actual order. Excuse me. And the steps in doing both are the same in this case, so I thought I'd talk about them both at the same time. So the alert and the order are going to be communicated through the media, of course, door-to-door methods, vehicle announcements, radio, and social media. We'll make use of fire department if they can spare any of the fire department, but of course RCMP officers, SAR officers will be assigned to subdivisions, and then they branch out and go door to door. The evacuees are given the prepared and prioritized lists and advised at the time before the situation becomes critical. So this time they're just giving the alert. And all the while this is going on, there will be regular briefings with mayor and council in the briefing room, again in the room downstairs. And council's role again is one of policy in terms of at least discussing the time of the evacuation alert and order. And again, consistent messaging. So that kind of ends, at this point, the scenario. At this point, residents would stay at the reception center until, of course, the all clear was given. Hopefully the fire has been extinguished and residents would be able to return home. But of course, even though Once the fire is extinguished, the residents can return. It's not necessarily, it's the end of the emergency event. It's not the end of the entire event, because there's also the recovery phase that the community must go through in terms of physical recovery and financial recovery, and maybe even emotional recovery if homes are lost in that case. But I did just want to touch on one more thing, if I can hit the right button. There we go. Which was the financing aspect. So, as I mentioned, local governments must finance all activities upfront. Funds can and will be used from the town here from general revenue, as well as money earmarked for other projects. So at this point, we don't really care about, if I can say, in the financial plan, we don't really care about using money that was earmarked for perhaps paving a road or building something. At this point, we need to do all that we can do in order to address the situation. And of course, we now have a reserve account for policing and emergencies, so hopefully there is a pool of funds in that account that we will be able to draw from. It's essential for staff to document all activities and expenditures as they incur for reimbursement purposes. So I think I've made that point critical. And again, Mayor and Council role in determining not only the level of expenditures in terms of the actual dollar amount, but also in terms of making strategic decisions in terms of what activities or what things must be funded. And for the final slide, a summary, I tried to get all of the players and all of the steps thrown on one slide here, just as a summary, and I got most of them. Unfortunately, I didn't get all of them. It got a little crowded, but it shows you how complex and all-encompassing responding to an emergency event can and will be. We didn't talk about aerial firefighting, but we got them on the picture. So that would be another level of response.
But of course, Gordon and his crew will have that out way before it gets to the crowd.
They will never let it get to the mayor's.
That's a great presentation. Any
Yes, very good.
questions?
So when we went through this at the RD, they gave us a little card, and it's got everybody's phone number on the back, and then it says on there, in the event of emergency, CAO will initiate a conference call. They give you the conference call dial-in number and the access code on it. So they're kind of set up and ready to roll if that were to happen, so.
So,
Just a little easier than trying to.
Yeah, because Richard's never on Facebook, so.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you'll be walking your dogs, so you won't be able to get
Now, that card is a good idea.
Yeah.
All right, anything to add, Mr. Fournier? Thank you for, I know you helped with this, so appreciate that, and understand you're soon to retire.
Yeah, no, December, yeah.
Congratulations for all your hard work over the years. All right, well, I guess there's no further questions, comments, but certainly take that under advisement for the card. And well done.
Thank you.
and we sent a card around the next one.
Yeah.
Quit changing first. Just throw it in there. Just throw it in here and you never worry about it.
6 copies out there.
All right, so move on with the rest of the agenda. We have no minutes, meetings, or departmental reports. We do have some staff reports. First one to deal with is Parks and Recreation Fees bylaw. Staff are recommending that we have such a bylaw and that we forward it to council for first, second, and third reading.
Move.
So on that recommendation, any discussion? Staff report is there, and we do have our rec director and parks directors here. CEO, anything to add?
No, relatively straightforward. It's a bylaw that's been on the work plan for a while, and Mandy's finally got to getting it in place. And now that the fees are in place, as any amendments we do to that will be brought forward by an amendment bylaw.
Right, so we just replace the schedule as we go.
Correct.
All right. Anything further on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, staff, for bringing that forward. We have, as the next item, there we go. the DCC report, and this is an update for information purposes to advise council of the upcoming public consultation, which is on Thursday, December 3rd at the Stair from 4 to 6 p.m. So move to receive that.
Move receipt. Second.
All those in favor? Motion's carried. Comments?
Just had one question. We have one building that we just issued a building permit to down on Stewart and Comox Avenue, and they would probably benefit from this, although they probably don't even know that it's going on. And I'm just wondering if there's any provision for somebody who's starting up now that they can maybe take advantage of some of this.
I think once they've applied for a permit, that's when it triggers.
Yeah.
But they have a second phase, don't they?
They do, and that's what we're looking at. They applied for a permit, but only for the first 3 buildings.
Okay.
So, in discussions that this was coming forward, we felt it in its best interest to proceed with this.
And how long before this would actually come into play, assuming that the public is good with it? Are we looking at a month, or a couple of months, or a couple of weeks, or
Probably in January somewhere.
January?
Well, it would have to, following the public consultation, it does have to go to the province for approval, so it depends on their background.
Okay.
So sometime in the spring.
Spring, okay.
Good
Thank
news
you.
overall, though, is typically these DC bylaws coming forward are referring to increases, and everyone rushes in to get their permits, but
Yeah.
that's not the case here if all goes as planned. All right, so that's been received. Anything further?
So that was December 3rd, 4 to 6
Yes.
at the Stair.
Yes. All right, so that's been dealt with, and then we also have a report on the Robb Avenue upgrade project, again, for information purposes to advise council of the upcoming public information meeting regarding this project, and that meeting is Thursday, in 2 days, tomorrow, 4:30 to 6:30 at the fire hall.
I'll move receipt of that.
And all those in favor? Motion's carried. And I notice that it's been posted in the paper, and any other efforts to communicate to Robb Avenue residents other than the newspaper?
There's been, I believe, door-to-door delivery of notices to the
Okay.
people that front that street.
All right. All right, so that's tomorrow, and it's sort of a drop-in type arrangement?
Yes.
All right, so that's been moved, second, and received. All right. Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, we'll move on in the agenda. I believe that there's nothing else other than we do have an in-camera meeting, so a motion to exclude the public under section 91B of the community charter.
I'll move that.
Those in favor? Motion carried, so let's have a brief recess until